Does it sound like I'm in a closet? I usually don't have any problem being heard, but let me know if I am. So thank you all for coming here today. It's really important for us to have this opportunity at the beginning of National Crime Victims Rights Week to recognize and raise awareness about issues that are relevant to victims of crime. And this year, we wanted to focus this event on learning about issues that are important in dealing with elder abuse. Now, I know that today, when we were setting this event up, we were very excited about having this opportunity and having such amazing speakers, not knowing that all of the presidential candidates would decide that today they needed to be in Albany. And not only did they need to be in Albany, they needed to be in Albany now, and they needed to be in Albany right next door. So I think Bernie Sanders is at the Armory, Kasich is next door at the Fort Orange Club, Donald Trump someplace else. So, you know, I think we can look at it that they're stealing our thunder, or we can look at it that they knew we were doing this event today, and so they came to Albany because of it. This is an issue that is important to all of us, and this is an issue that they should all be behind. So I'm happy that we're doing this event today, and maybe we'll get more information out to the public about it because the presidential candidates are here. So what I wanted to do today is just to give you some information about why we decided to focus on elder abuse as an issue in the state of New York and the things that are being done about it. So I'm also particularly pleased to be able to announce that many of my wonderful colleagues are here today to join us in learning more about this issue. We have agency commissioners, law enforcement professionals, service providers, victim advocates. Many of my staff are here and from other agencies here. And as Helen Keller put it so eloquently many years ago, alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And that's really why we're here today. It's to celebrate our successes and our successful collaborations, to reinforce our commitment to older adults and to victims of crime, and to get the word out about this issue, because there isn't enough known about what's happening in our communities around elder abuse. And so we need to understand the dynamics of it and what we can do to make a difference. New York State has been committed to ensuring that its most vulnerable citizens are both cared for and protected. And it's something that we as New Yorkers should really be proud of. One of the ways that the state has demonstrated a strong commitment to its vulnerable residents is through my agency, the Office of Victim Services. We are the second oldest crime victim compensation program in the country, and we're going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary this summer. So we are really excited about all of the things that we have done, but all of the things that we're going to be able to do with the resources that this agency brings. OVS is there as a safety net for crime victims who may need financial assistance as a direct result of their victimization, but also through the assistance and support of victim advocates and providers throughout the state. OVS funds 224 victim assistance providers throughout the state and serves victims in every county. We are the payer of last resort, but we can compensate victims for such widely disparate expenses as relocation expenses, paying for domestic violence shelters, essential personal property that's essential to health, welfare, and safety, crime scene cleanup, lost wages, among many, many other resources. And importantly, New York stands alone of all the other states in the country in that there is no limit in New York on reimbursement for medical and counseling expenses. And I think it's a real testament to this state's commitment to victims in that we are the only state that allows that, because we see that victimization and the effects of it can go on for years and years and years. This is not something that people get over. It's something that they will have to deal with for long periods of time, and we need to be there for them. And under Governor Cuomo's leadership, so much has been accomplished to ensure protection for all vulnerable New Yorkers and strengthen the safety nets as we have with OVS. In fact, just last year, the governor signed legislation that expanded eligibility for grandchildren to receive counseling expenses when a grandparent is murdered. And that recognizes the evolving dynamics of our family relationships. We need to be as inclusive as possible and make sure all victims and victim family members get the resources that they need. During his tenure, the governor has also signed bills such as the New York State Trafficking Victims Protection and Justice Act, legislation providing protections for domestic violence victims, and most recently paid family leave, which is a really important advancement for our workers in New York. But really, why are we here today? Why are we here to talk about elder abuse? OVS wants to make sure that we are serving all crime victims. So we can easily calculate who we are serving. You know, we can get reports from our victim providers about how many victims of this crime or that crime they've seen. We can go through our own data and figure out who we're paying expenses for. But what we've been really working at lately is figuring out who we're not serving. Who are the underserved populations in our state who are not coming to us seeking compensation, who are not visiting many of our advocates and service providers. And one of those groups that we've determined are older adults. We need to raise awareness of this issue regarding elder abuse in our communities. But that's not the only thing that we need to do around this issue. We need to do whatever we can to encourage and support elder victims to feel safe and supported so they will come forward and get the services that they need. But we also need to be supportive of the people that come forward to help those older adults who are being victimized. Once we identified the elder community as being an underserved population, I made it a mission to find out as much as I could about this issue. And it included going to see multidisciplinary teams in action. It was visiting hospital-based programs like Samaritan Hospital and St. Peter's Network, Weill Cornell. It was going to talk with our funded programs that have elder abuse components, such as Vera House in Syracuse. It was attending Elder Abuse Coalition meetings, working with state partners like the Office for the Aging and Division of Criminal Justice Services and OCFS. It was meeting with programs like the Hebrew Home in the Bronx to talk about their shelter programs. And what I learned is that there is so much good work going on in New York State, but we need everyone else to know that. And that's one of the reasons that we have this event today, is to get the word out about everything that we are doing. You know, we always have a lot more to do, but we should also celebrate the accomplishments that we've made so far. So one of the things, obviously, from my perspective, is to make sure that people know about the Office of Victim Services, because we're really an incredible resource for victims, and we want everyone who needs us to know that we are there for them. I hate to admit this, but I'm a member of the baby boomer generation, and, you know, we are living longer today than in past generations. And so with that come a lot of dynamics. You know, 75 million Americans are not only aging as the baby boomer generation, but they're still caring for their own elderly parents. So there are a lot of issues around elder care that are coming up in this generation. And the question is, we may be living longer, but are we living well? Are we taking care of our elders? Do they know where they can go for help? Or are the people who are caring for them, do they know where they can go for help? Do they know how to care for them? Do they know how to recognize signs of abuse? And I'm so grateful to have Philip Marshall here today to share his story, because that's one of the real factors that came up in his experience, was asking those same questions in dealing with the abuse of his grandmother, is where do I even go for help? Where do I even begin to find resources? It may be shocking for us to learn that 1 in 10 people in the United States who are over the age of 60 are abused or victimized. Fewer than 10% of those cases of abuse are reported to authorities. I mean, that's a staggering statistic. And signs of elder abuse are often missed by professionals. Why? Well, it may be a lack of training, a lack of awareness, a reluctance by older adults to report, or an inability for them to report. They may be infirm in some way. There's a lot of dynamics that come into play, especially because so many victims are victimized by someone they know. Some estimates are that 90% of the abuse is committed by a family member or caregiver. These are exactly the people that older adults should be able to rely on to take care of them, not to victimize them, and that's certainly what happened with Mrs. Astor. Many seniors are also poly-victims. They suffer abuse in a wide variety of ways, including physical abuse, emotional, sexual, financial, all different ways that they can be abused, often at the same time. And this elder abuse has other serious consequences for us, because elders who are abused, even modestly abused, if one can use that term, have a 300% increase risk of death when compared with those who are not abused. So through this victimization, elders are really being put in very precarious positions. And I think that in many ways, elder abuse is how we used to think of domestic violence 30 or 40 years ago. So whereas we used to consider, or our culture considered domestic violence to be a family issue, something that should be kept within the walls of the family, that's how elder abuse is often seen by people, that it's a family issue that should be quietly worked out amongst the family. But it's not just a family unit. As every one of us, as a family issue, as every one of us know who are here today, that this is a crime. And until we think of it that way, it's really we don't have an opportunity to address it appropriately. To attack a problem of this magnitude, we need to work together with all of our imagination, our experience, our resources, to figure out solutions to this issue. And so in that vein, I am very proud to partner with the New York State Office for Aging and its incredible director, Corinda Crossdale, because this is a way for all of our agencies to combine our talents and resources to address this problem. I also just want to recognize a couple of people who are here. Tom Scarf, are you here? Welcome. Thank you. Tom is here on behalf of the Albany County Executive, Dan McCoy. Thank you for being here today. And Jerry Mullen, where are you? Jerry is now the Deputy Commissioner at the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services and former Broome County District Attorney. He has joined us here today. Thank you so much. So now I'm going to introduce Corinda Crossdale. She's been the director of the New York State Office for the Aging since 2014. And prior to that, she served as Governor Cuomo's Assistant Secretary for Health, Executive Deputy Director for the State Office for the Aging, and Director of the County for Aging in Monroe County. So she obviously comes here and comes to her position with an incredible depth of experience in dealing with these very serious issues.
So it's a pleasure to be here this morning. I especially want to thank Director Elizabeth Cronin for today's event and highlighting elder abuse, which obviously we feel is an important issue with New York State Office for the Aging. I also would like to point out that Director Cronin did a fabulous job of doing her background on elder abuse. So some of the statistics that I'll be speaking about today will echo what the director spoke about. I would also like to take a moment to applaud Governor Cuomo for his leadership and for placing a spotlight on this critical issue. Research shows that all forms of elder abuse are rising and that signs of elder abuse may be missed by professionals, as Director Cronin had mentioned, who are working with older adults due to a lack of appropriate training. Also, older adults are often reluctant to report physical or elder abuse due to physical or cognitive abilities to report, or because they don't want to get the abuser, who's often a family member, in trouble. Financial exploitation is the most common form of elder abuse. It occurs in community settings such as private homes, as well as institutional settings like nursing homes and long-term care facilities. New York State Office for the Aging has partnered with other state agencies and organizations, including the New York State Office of Children and Family Services and Lifespan of Rochester, which administers our New York State Elder Abuse Education and Outreach Program. Also, through the Elder Abuse Prevention and Intervention Grant, the state is implementing an enhanced multidisciplinary team with Lifespan and WOW Community Medical College's New York City Elder Abuse Center to combat and end financial exploitation. I'd like to acknowledge Risa Brickman, who is here with us today. She's the director of the New York City Elder Abuse Center, and Alan Lawitz, who's here with us this morning, and he's the director of the Bureau of Adult Services at Office of Children and Family Services. I'd also like to recognize Catherine Burns-Smith, who is the director of the of the Long-Term Care Services for Schenectady County Office for the Aging. I told her she's our sole representative of area agencies on aging here this morning. So I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today because working in partnership with you really helps us move the ball in addressing this very important issue. Anne-Marie Cook, the CEO and president of Lifespan of Rochester, wasn't able to join us today, but she has been a wonderful partner in running our elder abuse program throughout the state of New York and also working with us on the multidisciplinary teams. Events like today's press conference helps us raise awareness, but as Director Cronin said, there's still a lot of work to be done. We're confident that by enhancing and building new collaborations among multiple systems, we have a greater opportunity to intervene early when abuse is suspected and move swiftly to prevent further loss. So I'd like to take the time to thank you all for being here to highlight this very important issue and invite Director Cronin back up to the podium.
Thanks so much, Corinda. I'm so glad that our agencies are able to partner together on this. So as part of a focus on elder abuse, we really need to make it easy to identify abuse for those who need to recognize it and to make it known where people can go for help. So just as we encourage bystander intervention in sexual assault cases, so too must we help bystanders recognize abuse in the elderly. OVS developed a palm card, which is this, and you will see there are stacks of them over by the door. Feel free to take them and pass them out, please. So what we wanted to do with this is to provide information on one side about what OVS does and that every crime victim matters and what our mission is and what services are available. But on the other side, we made this specific to elder abuse. And so we included some statistics, some signs and symptoms, and how to take action and where to get information. What we're hoping is that this information is going to be widely distributed. It's certainly going to be distributed by us and the Office for the Aging through our victim assistance providers and local state offices for the aging throughout New York State and to all of our partners in New York so that these can be handed out and people will have this information readily available. What we're looking to do is to raise awareness about this issue, to reach out to tell people, you know, it's okay, reach out to elderly family, to friends, to neighbors, and to report mistreatment to the proper authorities, to law enforcement, to adult protective services. We want older adults who suffer from victimization to know that they are not alone. Before I introduce our next speaker, I would like to introduce, I guess, Kate stepped out. So I'm going to introduce Bob Carney, who is the Schenectady County DA. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. Kate Hogan from Warren County. She'll be back in a moment. And Tony Jordan from Washington County. Thank you so much for being here. We also have several law enforcement officials present today, which is really important for us to have the involvement of our law enforcement partners. They are often first responders in these cases and are the ones who are going to be on the front line of being able to recognize whether someone is being abused and then how to handle them appropriately. You know, there's so many dynamics with with elders, whether they are afraid of the abuser and are afraid to come forward, whether they have physical infirmities or mental deterioration and need to be handled in a particular way so that they are first safe and supported, and then possibly that we can follow through with a prosecution. But I want to say thank you to Madison County Sheriff Alan Riley for being here today. He's chair of the New York Sheriff's Victims Advisory Board, so your input is really important to us. Chris O'Brien, the executive director of the Sheriff's Institute, and Ed Wurtzer, director of the Victim Notification Services of the Sheriff's Institute, welcome. And Margaret Ryan, who is the executive director of the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police and former police chief of the Dryden County Police Department. So thank you all for being here today. So OVS relies on our victim assistance providers throughout the state to assist crime victims in getting the help that they need, whether it's to walk them through the process of applying for compensation through OVS, counseling, or other services. You know, our victim advocates throughout the state are so versed and experienced in providing a wide array of services to people that are appropriate for their situations, and we are so proud to partner with them on all these issues. I can't say enough about their dedication and what they do for people, and I don't know how we could do what we do without having them available. So now I'm going to introduce Lindsay Crusan, who's the director of the Sexual Assault and Crime Victims Assistance Program at Samaritan Hospital, which is part of St. Peter's Healthcare Network. Lindsay's program is one of the programs that we fund, and we're very proud to say that she is part of our network as well. Lindsay?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here, Elizabeth and OVS. It's wonderful to see so many people in the room to talk about this very, very important issue. While it's horrific and it's awful, it's inspiring to know that there's such amazing work being done throughout our community, but also throughout New York State to prevent and respond to seniors who are abused. So I've been invited today to talk a little bit about two of the ways that our community, which is over in Rensselaer County, serving Troy, New York, and the Rensselaer County community at large, has responded to abuse against the elderly in our community. So because we noticed that there was such a prevalence of seniors coming to us who were reporting various types of abuse, including elder abuse and financial exploitation, our program has responded by kind of incorporating a senior crime victim component into our agency as a whole, but also has collaborated to form a program known as the Eddie Haven for Abused Elderly with the Eddie, in collaboration with them as part of our kind of parent company, which is St. Peter's Health Partners. So I'm going to talk a little bit about both programs and the ways that we're able to assist senior crime victims. So first of all, our senior crime victim program, which is mostly funded by the Office of Victim Services, offers a variety of services to respond to seniors in our community who are being abused or have been the victims of crime. So like other victims of crime, we offer things like short-term and long-term counseling and therapy. We offer assistance with filing Office of Victim Services compensation claims. We also go out and we try to educate the community and professionals about how to respond appropriately to seniors who are being abused. It seems like it's a theme to talk about the fact that, it is really important for that initial response to be supportive and respectful one when people come forward, because we want to encourage victims of crime to report and to, follow through with prosecution so that perpetrators of crime can be held accountable. We also, in that program, reach over 200 older adults every year. So we know, though, that that is only hitting the tip of the iceberg. We know that there are many people who are out there who are struggling, who are not coming forward to receive our services. So as Elizabeth mentioned, really encouraging our communities to report elder abuse is really, really vital, not only to preventing perpetration, but to make sure also that the people in our communities who are suffering are getting the assistance that they need. The other program that we have worked to form is the Eddie Haven for Abused Elderly, and it's a short-term, safe residential program for victims of elder abuse, most often who are being abused by their caretaker or a relative. And it's really designed to meet needs of victims who need to leave their home because their home is no longer a safe place. So it's a collaborative effort, as I mentioned, between the Eddie and also is supported by our parent company, which is St. Peter's Health Partners. And it really also depends on the coordinated efforts of all of the disciplines that are here in the room, including law enforcement, prosecutors, social services, adult protective services, and the New York State Office of Victim Services. So currently our program serves 3 counties. So we're able to offer respite to victims of elder abuse in Rensselaer County, Albany County, and Saratoga County. And it was launched in 2008 really as a response to the fact that many programs, many domestic violence programs were not able to serve older adults because of the very unique needs that older adults have, whether it be medical needs or just the physical limitations that older adults might have. So we really wanted to respond to our community's needs, and that's where this program came from. So when a client enters the Eddie Haven, they're provided with a safe place to stay, usually for a period of a month to 3 or 4 months. They're also provided with case management, with legal assistance, with therapy, and also if they have pets, we have a network of providers who are able to take their pets in as well, so that doesn't have to be a barrier to them leaving their home. And following their stay, either the victim or client goes back to their home if it's safe, or we set them up in a new safe living situation. And currently we serve about 40 to 50 abuse victims each year, with about 3 to 4 of them taking advantage of our housing opportunity. So certainly, again, we know that there's a need, and unfortunately, we know that we're not seeing everyone in our community who could benefit from our services. I also, while I'm so thrilled to talk about the wonderful work that our program is doing, there are many, many other victim assistance providers throughout New York State who have similar programs and are doing really, truly amazing work. And we're joined, I just want to acknowledge, we're joined by Kathy McGee, who's the director of the domestic violence program with Equinox, as well as Rick Storms, who is a case manager in their elder abuse program. And just acknowledge that while I'm sharing an example of our program, it's certainly not the only program in New York State that's doing this very important work. So thank you all for being here and for talking about this issue, and thank you to the Office of Victim Services for making this kind of the primary focus of National Crime Victims Rights Week here in New York State. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay. You know, I really appreciate your raising the issue about pets, because that is a serious concern for a lot of people. Certainly we see it in the domestic violence context, where a domestic violence victim will choose not to leave an unsafe situation because they don't know what's going to happen to their pet. And it's similar here, where that may be for an older adult, the one individual in their life that they care for and feel safe with. And if that security is taken away from them, they can easily choose not to leave an unsafe situation. So that's just an excellent thing to hear. And I just want to welcome DA Kate Hogan, who had to step out. I just wanted to acknowledge that you're here today, and we're so happy to have all of the prosecutors and the law enforcement partners working together on this issue. In Japan, they have a national celebration every year called Respect for the Aged Day. And it's a national holiday that was started as a way of honoring its older citizens. And it was a way for people to gain wisdom by listening to the elders. I think this is a wonderful concept, and it's one that we can emulate today by holding events like this to highlight an issue serious to our elder community, and to show that we hold our older adults in high esteem, and that we will step up to prevent abuse, and when necessary, respond to it in appropriate ways, that we will not consider abuse and mistreatment as family issues or as issues that we're not going to talk about, but we're going to put all of our energy and our resources and our efforts toward eradicating this problem that's affecting so many of our elder citizens. As Dr. Martin Luther King once observed, it's the quality, not the longevity of one's life that's important. And I agree with that statement. You know, we all hope to live very long, healthy lives, but for many people, living longer just extends the period of time that they are vulnerable to abuse. And we want to make sure that all of our older adults in New York, and I guess I'm not quite there, but I'm getting close to that I want to make sure, you know, I too have those protections, and my loved ones and all of our loved ones have someone looking out for them and doing something about it. So now I'm going to introduce Risa Breckman, who is then going to introduce Mr. Marshall. So Risa and I were connected through a mutual colleague who, when I met this mutual colleague, said, I have somebody you have to talk to, because I had mentioned that I was very interested in elder abuse, and she said, you have to call this woman in the city, which I did. And Risa and I have just had the most amazing conversations, and she is the one who introduced me to the multidisciplinary team in Brooklyn. I got to see the incredible work that they're doing, and how so many in this field are really forward-thinking, you know, that we're not resting on past laurels, that we're really thinking beyond the way that things have always been done. For example, we know that multidisciplinary teams work in a variety of contexts like child abuse, but now we're taking that model and moving it into other frames such as elder abuse, and it's quite successful and really wonderful to see that the state, the federal government, that we're putting our resources toward those things. Risa is the director of the New York City Elder Abuse Center at Weill Cornell Medical College. The center is a highly collaborative organization that aims to prevent abuse and improve the ways professionals, organizations, and systems respond to it. Risa's been really at the forefront of developing programs, protocols, educational forums, materials on elder abuse, neglect, and exploitation since 1982. So she's really been diving deep into this issue for decades, and is really an expert on what is needed and what the problems have been. She is co-author of the seminal book guiding interventions called Strategies for Helping Victims of Elder Mistreatment, and I am so happy that she's here with us today. Risa?
So first, thank you, Elizabeth, for those kind words. I consider it an honor to have been asked to introduce the next speaker, Philip Marshall. I first heard Philip's name about 10 years ago when I read in the papers that his father was neglecting his grandmother, Brooke Astor, and financially exploiting her. This story made big news because Mrs. Astor was well known for her many decades of enormously generous philanthropy. It was through the determined efforts of Philip and others close to his grandmother that Mrs. Astor was able to live out the last year of her life in her country home as she had wished, and free from neglect and exploitation. Anthony Marshall, Philip's father, was later prosecuted and convicted of elder abuse-related crimes. After the closely watched trial, Philip could have understandably chosen to go back to being a private citizen, but Philip had come to understand that millions of older people around the country are abused, neglected, and exploited and suffer in silence. He felt compelled to take action. He shared his story at elder abuse conferences around the United States. There he met others also hurt by elder abuse. He listened attentively to their stories. He heard about the challenges families and professionals face as they work to prevent abuse and help victims. He was one of the few chosen to testify before the U.S. Senate Special Committee on Aging in 2015, and then his resolve deepened. So much so that this past year, Philip took an academic leave from Roger Williams University, where he is a professor of historic preservation, to work full-time on this issue. Taking a systems-based, person-centered approach, Philip builds awareness about the need for elder abuse prevention, research, and victim services. He takes these conversations to funders, nonprofit leaders, advocacy groups, financial industry executives, law enforcement leaders, policymakers, legislators, really anyone who will listen. He always acknowledges the outstanding work of the dedicated people who, without much money or any fanfare, help older victims day in and out to achieve safety and well-being. What Philip rarely mentions is that freeing his grandmother from the neglect and exploitation was, for him, at times bewildering, at times traumatic, and always distressing. And so it is often as well for the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of concerned family, friends, neighbors, and caregivers across the country who take a stand to help elder abuse victims, often at their own peril. Like Philip, they are often the ones standing between the abusers and isolated victims. Without these unsung heroes, abuse worsens. Victims perish. We must notice them. We must reach out. They need information. They need our support. I want to note that while Philip has traveled across the country for 5 years advocating for elder justice, this is the first time he is speaking publicly in New York State about it. And I know this moment is so meaningful for him, given his grandmother's deep connection to our state. So now it is my great privilege to introduce you to a loving, courageous grandson, a passionate elder justice advocate, my eloquent, smart, committed colleague, someone I am proud to also call a friend, Philip Marshall.
Thank you so much, Risa. Is my grandmother, Brooke Astor, now rests in peace? I could have resumed my life as before. For years, my battle for my grandmother and my battle against my father consumed my life and consumed our family. In 2009, a friend familiar with my circumstances said, after a 6-month trial of my father, "You must be glad that's all behind you." But I realize when elder abuse hits home, it hurts. I realize while my grandmother was emotionally and financially abused and isolated, her case is far from isolated. There are millions of elder victims today suffering similar injury. I realize if my grandmother, Brooke Astor, can be victimized, elder abuse does not discriminate. Any elder is vulnerable. More than 1 in 10 will be a victim. And I realize the aftermath of elder abuse far exceeds any dollar amount. Most costs are irretrievable, some compounded. And I realize to be complacent about elder justice is to be complicit in elder abuse. In fact, our national negligence is a proximate cause of elder abuse and an injury to our mores and morals. Our inaction protects perpetrators, not victims, our loved ones, or on another day, ourselves. When our elders lose their sight, it's natural. When we are blind to their plight, it's negligent. When our elders lose their hearing, it's natural. But when we are deaf to their cries for help, it's negligent. When our elders lose their voice, it's natural. But when we choose not to voice our concern, it's negligent. When elders' capacity is reduced, it's natural. But when their assets are reduced without consent, it's criminal. Over a decade ago, I was filled with angst, frustration, and a sense of impotence as my grandmother's world, which had spanned the globe and a century, had been so compromised and reduced by her son, my father. I did not know what to do or who to turn to. Yet, when bad things happen, good people get together. In helping my fragile, abused grandmother, I was not alone. Her abuse galvanized a collective response by family, friends, staff, and caregivers, all united by compassion and a common cause. Individuals, and some with a great mixed skill set. The strength of our diversity contributed so much to our success. To them, I'm forever grateful. Staff and caregivers could have walked away any day, but they stood firm and helped my grandmother. Yet some saviors endured secondary or vicarious victimization. I filed a guardianship petition to save my grandmother and to help those who were helping her. In filing my petition, which was to have been sealed, I was hoping that this matter would be quietly settled. Yet this was not just a family affair, nor was it civil, it was criminal. If I could do it all again, I would have gone to the DA right away. I am one of many who stood up for my grandmother in her last years and who then took the stand in 2009 in criminal court for the greater cause of elder justice. In our efforts to help my grandmother and the cause she represented, we advanced from tribulation to trial. From the tribulation of her abuse and a determination by the guardianship that elder abuse was not substantiated, to a trial that determined that proved otherwise. Here I'm particularly grateful for the Manhattan DA, whose elder abuse unit provided compassion in action, coupled with capacity, and who did so much to respect our anguish, help us heal, and find our voice in the years to and including the trial. At trial, for me, taking the stand was difficult, but not taking a stand and not helping my grandmother would have been more so. The jury's verdict, my father was found guilty on 15 of the 16 counts against him. Later, all but one were upheld on appeal. After spring and long summer of my father's trial, and after heart-wrenching testimony, this was a very bittersweet harvest. Yet this harvest has so nourished the cause of elder justice. I could have disregarded heart-wrenching accounts and calls from staff for help. I could have found false consolation in thinking my grandmother had a good life, and while in the throes of dementia, wasn't cognizant of her circumstances. I could have maintained the fallacy that families should not air their dirty linen in public, even when financial assets are being laundered. I could have been made complicit by the false prospect of silence money that would have greatly increased my inheritance. I could have enabled my father by thinking family first and presumed my grandmother's only child, only son, natural object of her affection, deserved all he sought and stole. But I could never, ever live with any of these choices. So I chose to act, in doing so, help my grandmother and those helping her, and in so doing now, help empower others to recognize and report abuse so victims can recover their dollars and cents, their stolen assets, and their sense of self and self-determination. In 2014, before an annual conference of the National Center for Victims of Crime, I expressed the parallels between my profession and elder justice. Both involve victims and address preservation, and elders with such embodied worth. My profession, historic preservation, started out in response to the damage or destruction of our cultural resources, harm due to poor policies, practices, a disinvestment, and a discount, sometimes until it's too late, of the ageless value of that which is old. Early on, we were good at saving buildings that were victim to neglect, maltreatment, and horrible interventions. This work, which continues, is heroic and visible. Witness the beautiful, respectful restoration of the state capitol, and here, the Alfred E. Smith building, just two examples. But now, while still working with those who are vulnerable and victims, we also realize that community concern and engagement, vigilance, protection, and prevention are just as important as professional restoration, which is damage control after the fact. Here today, restoration or relief and recovery of elders' lives for their benefit and our benefit also informs proactive preventive work. There's a positive feedback loop along the continuum of care with victims as they heal, informing our preventive efforts against abuse, and in so doing, come full circle, becoming whole, even holy. This is why the Office of Victim Services are so critical to our common cause. Elder justice is in its infancy compared to other realms that define our social and moral obligations. Here, elder justice can help complete, not compete with, other causes. Social justice is not just about one cause or just about another. It's inclusive and embracing. Yet causes have their special concerns and needs. These are being affirmed today for elders. Elder abuse is a pervasive, profound, and systemic problem, best addressed through a systems-based approach to understand better our elder justice universe with its constellations, the alignment of its shining stars, and the forces that keep them apart or draw them together by the gravity of elder abuse. Today, the Office of Victim Services focuses on elders' needs to advance work with elders while enhancing our multidisciplinary approach in concert with all sectors. There's research that I cite as I travel from border to border, coast to coast. It's titled Under the Radar, New York State Elder Abuse Prevalence Study, which examines self-reported prevalence and documented case surveys, and, I quote, found an elder abuse incident rate in New York State that was nearly 24 times greater than the number of cases referred to social service, law enforcement, or legal authorities who have the capacity as well as the responsibility to assist older adult victims. For financial exploitation, the incidence was 44 times greater. Efforts by Office of Victim Services provides one more reason for victims and anyone else to report abuse, knowing that help is available. My grandmother would certainly never want to be known as one of America's most famous cases of elder abuse. Nor did she, while in the throes of dementia, choose to be victimized, deprived, manipulated, and robbed as part of a calculated scheme to defraud, as characterized by the Manhattan District Attorney. Yet the sad circumstances surrounding my grandmother informed a timely and timeless cause in elder justice. This may be one of her greatest most lasting legacies. At 104, she unknowingly entered her encore career as an advocate for elder Americans, including elders 2 generations younger. Just as her timing was critical with her intentional quality of life philanthropy starting in the 60s, so in her advanced age, she unintentionally advanced the cause at quality of life at the end of life. By 2013, the U.S. will have over 70 million shades of gray. The world will have 1 billion, each one with its own hue, value, and chroma to color our world far beyond that provided by polarizing perceptions of the black and white approach to aging, to individuals, and to age. Our global today is our global 365-degree perimeter protection and care of elders year-round. The protection involves awareness, detection, rapid response, and recovery of victims' assets and lives, while empowering elders as wounded healers to come full circle and help inform others. To victims, I say, before you endure the next fall, there's safety net at the other end of the call. Thank you for inviting me to share my story and our dreams. And keep in mind, all this is bipartisan. The campaign color for elder justice is purple, an equal measure of red and blue. Thank you more for all you do every day with elders to help them autograph their lives, center stage, in the limelight, but with supporting actors in each of us. Thanks.
Thank you, Philip. I don't even know how to follow that up. I think that speaks volumes about this issue from someone who lived it, someone who experienced all that his family went through, and yet is here today as an advocate in not dropping the ball, not letting this be a historical event. And I was so touched by your continued emotion about this, and it shows us exactly what we were talking about before, that this is not something that we can just, a victim doesn't get victimized and then it's over, we're on to the next chapter. This is something that lives in families sometimes forever. So thank you so much for sharing and your willingness to share your story with us. I want to thank you all for coming today. I appreciate that you're here and not at the Fort Orange Club or the Armory or the Times Union Center, because as important as I think national politics is, I can't think of a more important issue than the one that we're discussing today. Thank you for your commitment to assisting victims of crime in general and assisting victims of elder abuse, and for everything that you do in partnership with us to try and alleviate this problem and eradicate it. So thank you again for coming. Enjoy your day. And for the press, if you're interested in speaking with any of our speakers, we'll be over here. So thank you again for coming.